I want to call the special meeting of the Brattleboro Selectboard for Tuesday, November 27th, 2018 to order. Has the meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
Thank you, Jan. First order of business after we convene the meeting is public participation. Is there anyone in the public that would like to say anything about something that's not on the agenda? Yes.
Hey.
So you brought a big cup of coffee, Mike.
We have Chief
Where?
Bacassi.
You plan on a late night?
Or enough to share.
So a couple of weeks ago, you gave Chief Fitzgerald a chance to stand up here and throw out a couple of safety reminders.
Yes.
And I got jealous, so
Okay,
with
good.
the board's permission, I'd just like to
Go for
mention
it.
a couple things about the storm today.
Definitely.
So just a quick update, we still have 250 people in town without power. They're pretty clustered, if you will, in two different places. Yeah, Sunset Lake Road is one of them. Upper Dummerston Road and Heinsberg Road are the two big ones. We do now have staff going out and checking on those roads to make sure we're checking on the special needs folks to make sure that they're all set. With an estimated time to come back on at 9 to 9:30. With this being the first bigger snowstorm, I guess you'd call it, of the year, depending on where you are, because this storm was really elevation dependent. If you were sitting at Cumberland Farms on Marlborough Road, you had an inch of snow. You go up by Stark Road and it was a winter wonderland up there, and it was very, very treacherous. So some of the reminders I just wanted to throw out to the public as we go into winter is that just because there's an inch or so where you are doesn't mean that things are worse somewhere else. We had a hard time convincing motorists not to go up Route 9 after we closed it because we got well, this is Vermont, we've only got a couple of inches of snow on the ground. Well, if you got up near Patrick's or higher than that, Wilmington, they were looking at 16 inches of snow. So it was very different the higher you got, and I just want to remind people of that. The other thing is when there's trees and wires down, don't drive through them and don't try to move the trees out of the way. There's electrical lines 9 times out of 10 tangled up in these trees, and they still can be live. And one wrong step and it could be a disaster. So I ask people to please just leave that stuff alone until we know the power is dead. And then one last reminder is when we close roads, we do it to keep people safe, especially the motorists. And when we put out cones and barricades and barrels, don't move them, don't drive around them.
Oh my gosh.
Find an alternative route to where you're going because you're only making the situation worse. So we had a lot of that today to the point where we reclosed Route 9 to clean it up again. So we just would remind people that we don't like to close roads, but when we have to, we have to. And it's done for a reason. Don't drive around the barricades. And
Wow.
that's my spiel. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very basic information.
Yeah, I firmly support that, and I would firmly and gently ask that we listen to the chief, please.
Is there anyone else that would like to say something about something that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll go right into new business. And tonight we're talking about the FY20 proposed budget. And first up is Department of Public Works. I see we have Steve Barrett.
Mr. Steve.
Oh, yeah.
And as Steve comes to the table, I'll just remind the folks that may be following along at home that they can access the town's proposed budget by going to the town's website at www.brattleboro.org. On the homepage, over on the right-hand side under News, they can click on FY20 Proposed Budget. That's going to take you to a sub-page that has several different documents in it, and the one that we're going to be looking at, 2 sections of this evening, is also called FY20 Proposed Budget. So for folks watching at home, hopefully you can follow along with us, and we're going to begin tonight with Public Works at page 15 of that proposed budget document.
Great. And Carol Alott has joined the table.
Well, he needed someone to.
I told her.
Steve is
some
scared to be
support.
alone.
Yes. So
Carol and I work a lot together, and there's some things in our budget that sometimes do overlap, and so we're here together as
United.
one, united.
All right, we're ready. Whoever wants to, you're going to go
So
first.
I could give you a little summary of my budget.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of big increases in this budget this year. On the first page, you'll see that there really isn't a lot of increases. There's some salary increases that are done through the town manager's office. I do not set the salaries or those different pays, and you'll see where the conference memberships, professional services, which is for engineering, outside services, that's pretty much level funded. You'll see a slight increase in the clothing allotment. On page 16, you'll see the public work bridges. That's for repairing bridges throughout town. There's a $10,000 line item. That's to put membranes on roofs, to fix rails, whatever work's necessary for general maintenance. Anything larger you would see in the capital budget. I would come before you if we're going to replace a bridge. Under the Public Works drainage, there's new laws that have come out with stormwater to protect our waterways. So we've increased some of our budget line items for pipes because we know that we're going to be installing more piping and also following the guidelines of the stormwater rules. So that gives us these, in the drainage account, some more flexibility to do so.
Quick note on that. Thanks for pointing out that reason, Steve. But just for the select board and the public to know, in future years, we're going to see much more significant increases than just this $3,400, and you'll see them mostly in the capital budget as the new rules that are going to apply statewide start taking effect. They're kind of ramping up the stricter regulations, and Public Works has been involved in the meetings around, the preparations for that, but the costs are going to start to hit us over these next few years.
Yep. And then under Public Works equipment, these line items, the parts, the tires, accessories, small tools, those are the first one. The parts is to pay for any parts for any of the equipment at Public Works in the general fund, and also for repairs or upkeep of that equipment. There's a slight increase of $3,000. The account is $98,000. It was $95,000. Tires and accessories is level funded at $12,000. Small tools, we've had a $900 increase to purchase more tools that are used by the staff to work on the vehicles along with the mechanics. Not just the mechanics work on the equipment, but the employees are responsible for their equipment also. So we have a general tool crib for all the employees to use. And normally mechanics have their own tools, but not all our employees have toolboxes, so that's what that's for. And the Public Works fuel, you can see that's pretty stable. This is going into our first year of the new WEX program. The Department of Public Works was the fuel depot for the town of Brattleboro for many, many years, and we just completed dismantling our fueling station and removal of the underground tanks, and that was successful. There was no problems with the soils or anything, so it was a clean removal. And now we're going into this new WEX system, which the Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland set up. Works on a credit card. So we're just going to see how that goes. But pretty much our fuel numbers are dependent on what type of weather we have, and who knows how that's going to be. The way it's starting out, it could be could be interesting. Summer roads. That's for the general work that's done in the summer. Chloride's applied to the roads, on the gravel roads, to prevent dust and stabilize the road. The hot mix accounts generally used starts in the spring with the potholes, and then it's used to patch or to do some small paving on smaller streets or repairs. The coal patch you'll see has gone up the last few years. You can see back in 2018 we spent $1,700, but we're pretty familiar with what street that's on. The gravel account is level funded. Again, that's $32,000. That's for the back roads. We have over 30 miles of gravel roads that we maintain, and guardrails is level funded also. Then sidewalk repairs. This is just for small repairs around town. There's $25,000. And that's separate from the capital account that we have to do more larger replacement projects. As you go to page 17, we have retaining walls. There's an increase there. We actually have a retaining wall on Beach Street at the corner of Elliott Terrace. It's a laid-up stone wall that we've identified that needs some work, so we've added an additional $4,000 to that account from 11,000, I'm sorry, to 15,000. And then the street signs, markings, the broom material, that's for the street sweeper brooms. Traffic safety, this is a line item that was supported by traffic safety and the select board to purchase different devices. That's approved by both the traffic safety and the select board. And let's see what else. Tree removal, that account, we've level funded this year. As the board knows, we had a problem at Horton and Homestead with a large amount of trees, and that's going to expend a lot of money in this year's tree budget, but we're hoping that that will level off after next year. And tree care is similar, but like, for instance, there's been a request on Main Street through the tree committee and a citizen to trim one of the branches, and we're going to hire an arborist to do some specialized trimming. So this $2,000 accounts for more specialized work that's done, or recommendations that may be made by the tree committee. And then we go into the salt budget, which we've attacked pretty well this year. That's level funded. Again, if you look back, it's hard to tell. You can see years where we spent 171,000, 132,000. We're doing the 5-year average of 120,000, but it may be that the 5-year average will change here in a couple of years. But sometimes you'll have a few years and you'll have a low. So the average is about 120. And just for your information on that, we use about half of what the recommended salt per ton per mile is recommended. There's actually a ratio, and our trucks have the ability to measure the salt, so we're not wasting a lot of salt. We're using the minimum amount of salt that's needed to do the job, and that allows us to keep the roads clear when necessary, but there's going to be times when they are snow covered. The sand budget, again, that's level funded. We stockpile that on Fairground Road behind the baseball stadium. You can see it right there. There is sand that residents can use or pick up there in buckets if they need some. Chains and blades, that's specialty items that are used for plows. The chains are hooked to the tires, and the blades are the wear blades on the plow. And then equipment maintenance, that's level funded, again at 21,000. The Public Works yard expense, I'll be coming to the board maybe next week or the week after, soon. I know you have a meeting, so pretty much every Tuesday here for a while, so we'll be coming to discuss the program to look at the feasibility to look at Public Works facility to see what options there may be there to what we want to do, and we'll get into that when we discuss it. So the results of that is you'll see I've tapered off on some of the building repairs and the maintenance supplies and some of the other line items. Right now, the building's in stable condition. It's good, it's safe for the employees. So we're going to hold off putting a steady diet of money into the building until we make some decisions on the bigger picture. And the electric, you can see, is kind of stabilized over the last few years. There has been some energy improvements, and there was also some insulation projects that we did, which has probably reduced the power also at Public Works. And the traffic light line item is pretty much level funded. That again, it pretty much works okay the way it is. There were some improvements that Joe Newton made this year to on some of the controllers. There were some complications where they weren't in sync. So, and also some of the pedestrian buttons were sticking. And so what that would do is cycle a pedestrian mode every single time, which actually cues the traffic. So those have been replaced and some of the timers have been checked. And that's what that line item is for. And that's the Public Works budget.
Does anybody have any questions?
couple if no one else does.
I do, but you can go first.
I do later, but now you know.
I'm always going first. I'm always curious about the staff salary line. Can you just give us a quick breakdown of how many staff that is? Full-time, part-time?
Well, there's 13 members of the highway department, and then there's highway superintendent, half of the highway superintendent in there, or a percentage. I don't know if I have the detail sheet with me. So it's basically the highway department, part of the superintendent's salary, part of the secretary salary is in there, and that's it.
15 total employees. correct?
15 total, yeah.
Okay.
I think we adjusted that last year to make it a little bit cleaner with the utilities. We used to have 2/3, 1/3. So what we did is took comparable employees and just made it a little bit more even.
I think I remember.
So it was
discussing that, or you-
difficult, like for payroll, 50% utilities, and then 50% general fund. So we tried to streamline it, which has worked fine.
Right.
It's 13 staff salaries that they're all, in addition, mechanics, and mechanics are included in that.
The 13 that I talked about are highway staff, and then there's 3 mechanic staff salaries, and one of the mechanics is 50% mechanic and 50% highway employee. He helps out and supplements that department. And that was done several years ago when we removed a full-time position within the highway. We eliminated a position and made half a maintenance person and half a highway person.
And the secretary that's in that salary line and then the clerical are different positions?
That's my mistake. No, clerical is separate. The 42,523 is separate. So it'd be the 13 salaries, 3 mechanics, staff salaries 13, mechanic salaries 3, clerical 1, and then part of that staff salary, I believe, will be highway superintendent.
Thanks.
Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you. I wanted to just ask about the sidewalk repairs, because I know, is there a capital item for that too?
Yes, there is. Yep.
70,000 capital item.
We're asking for 70 this year.
I'm especially sensitive to sidewalk issues this year, having a stroller that's not necessarily for off-road. How are we doing with sidewalks? I mean, I just wanted to get a sense of would you say to us, we need more money for sidewalks? I can't imagine you not.
I would also say yes.
I'll say that.
I think...
And I'm not saying you're getting it. I'm just saying, what is your mood on the sidewalk?
Well, I think we've made a lot of progress, and I say that because we weren't really supporting capital sidewalk investments. So our 25,000 was doing some. Like if you contracted it out, it'd do 250 feet out of 36 miles. Because it's basically, if you put brand new sidewalk in, it's $100 a foot with granite curb. So then you can break that down and you can start doing the math with it, and you can say, well, the curb's already there, and you do the concrete. So to get up to the proposed budget, we had 50,000, now we're going up to 70. I think we're making good strides. Our team has been doing a lot of the works in combination with the contractors. In some cases, we'll have somebody come in and that's an expert in laying curbing. They'll put the curbing in, and then we'll pour the sidewalks to save money. So I think we're doing really well. We take input from the public. We also go out and walk the sidewalks. We did a survey, and we've done surveys where the engineer goes out and walks. And he actually, it's pretty interesting when you actually physically go out there and walk in these different areas. And there's some sidewalks that are pretty deplorable.
You should go with a stroller.
Right. And then we have to base it from there on what's the most heavily used sidewalks. You're going to find there's some sidewalks in some neighborhoods that are pretty much been abandoned. that have grass growing through them where you can't see them any longer.
Bushes.
So, we're looking at a plan to see, is there some neighborhoods where maybe we fix one sidewalk and get it in really good condition and abandon a sidewalk on a small street, side street. And also, we're looking at different techniques. You'll notice, and you've probably noticed this on High Street Hill, the sidewalk on the southern side is all paved.
Right.
Now, up at Public Works, there's actually, it's blacktop instead of concrete,
How do you like it?
I don't like the look, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I don't like the look of it, but I noticed today as I was walking down to the works, it is better for the footing.
Really?
it's better with it, with this time of year, you put a little salt to it and it clears. The other problem is, with the ADA issues with people with mobile devices, the cracks in the sidewalk, or you'll notice that with the stroller, is, there's a bump every 3 feet, every 4 feet. So we also have a sidewalk up at Public Works, across the street from Public Works on Fairground Road, that has been there for 30 years now with granite curb and blacktop. And it's been very successful.
Now, can I ask
So-
you, how do you decide?
Well, what we look at is an area, High Street was a little bit out of the norm. In the downtown area, we figure there should be concrete or a designated type of sidewalk. The whetstone pathway was a break away from concrete. It's a textured asphalt that's painted. All that is regular asphalt.
That's going to be my next question.
That is
You don't like the
stamped,
look.
and then there's a coating put on it. But it looked nice.
Yeah.
It's wore really well.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, we need to put another coating on it. You can actually just repaint it. So that's an alternative.
That does look great.
So we try in areas that are heavily used, closer to downtown areas, that model, we try to maintain the concrete.
Because there's
And
like Oak Grove Avenue,
Oak Grove Avenue was actually, some of that was been paved for over 20 years.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, you try to look, if you go over to, areas that have schools, like in front of Green Street School, a main intersector coming in, we've stuck with the concrete. So we're looking at some of the different neighborhoods to look at, say, well, where does it make sense and where is it cost effective? And where can we get more sidewalk put in? That's what we're talking about. There's advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of an asphalt sidewalk is it's easy to repair. If you have a slight crack, you can saw cut it and get some hot mix and repair it, and it's back in service that day. So there are some advantages. We just made some repairs on Weston Avenue. We felt that should remain concrete as a main entrance into town. It has the granite sidewalk. High Street Hill was away from the norm. It's in the shade because of a wall. We had icing problems. We had tripping problems because of the slope when the sidewalk was poured. So we felt that was appropriate to actually put asphalt there. If you go around the corner, when we did Green Street Extension, we kept that concrete. So High Street, you could really look at as an experiment right now. So it's and
As far as safety, it's very successful.
and they're all there's alternatives. You could look at coloring
That's what
the asphalt. There are stamped alternatives which are pretty expensive and still become a trip hazard. Or just a strict paint, or they can actually put a dye into the asphalt.
Is the dye as expensive as as a stamp? Is still running up
The
there?
stamp is expensive because you heat it and then you put it's a cable that looks like, has the pattern of a brick, and then you roll that into it. And then there's a special paint that's pretty expensive that is applied to it after.
Gotcha.
There may be a good reason the paint's expensive,
Yeah, and I think.
because it protects the life of the asphalt.
And there's alternatives for it too. I mean, there's different, like we've talked to Sherwin-Williams and some of the industrial users. In fact, on the pathway, we've done a whole section using a different type at less cost. So there's all kinds of things. We're experimenting with all these different alternatives. The concrete curbing, there's a lot of concrete curbing that was put in town It was put on, it was a HUD project that was done on Elliott Street, it was done on Chestnut Street, it was done on Washington Street. Frost, all those streets were done, and the reason was because they could get those monies, and they could do, big improvements to all these neighborhoods. So they fixed all the infrastructure, they checked the water mains, and they did the curbing. But the problem is, long-term, that concrete curbing just disintegrates with the salt.
And the plows don't help.
The plows don't help, and the salt, and so they just breaks down. So we haven't really installed any more concrete curbing. We don't like the idea of that. We're trying to get away from that model.
One last, I actually have 5, but I'm only going to ask one. The sidewalk next to the new fire station, I'm assuming maybe that it's being held off on because we're going to be making some changes on the corner.
Yeah, you're talking about
on the
coming down the
west
hill?
side, coming down the hill.
Yeah, that's going to get attention next spring.
Yeah, there's a model there to decrease the width, similar to the Union Hill at Church. So that I think it's over 100 feet across now, the crosswalk.
It really is.
So it'll be very similar to Union Hill with somebody coming, we'll hire a curbing company to put curbing, and then we'll go up the roadway and replace sections of that sidewalk. And then the street needs to be paved also.
That's what I thought. I just
So-
want to make you aware that that's super dangerous.
And we're kind of
right
keeping
now.
our eye, there's a retaining wall there we're keeping our eye on also.
Yeah. I
Just,
wonder
to make sure that we can keep everything stable there. If you go further up the hill from the fire department,
And when's that project?
that's next spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if some of the blacktop could fix the areas where you literally will go right into the street. It's a
Yeah,
gaping.
Colin fell into the
in
street
like
last
3 or
week.
4 spots all in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you walk right.
It'd be something we'd look at in the spring. There's not much.
Yeah.
As we have this coal patch now, and that wouldn't really do the trick.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I have one for Steve. Steve, the department head salary,
Yep.
the line over the last few years, can you kind of give the history of why? I mean, one year we didn't spend as much as we budgeted, and the next year we budgeted $1,000, $1,400 less, and then this year we're up 7.8%.
Yep. I think that's a good one for Peter.
Yeah,
It's a good one for Peter.
I can speak to that. So I'm not sure exactly what happened on the years when the budget didn't line up just right with the actual expenditure, but this year there's a slightly larger than
Average.
trend increase because we adjusted the salary for the position when we were doing the utility budget. We talked about relative comparison within the management team.
I remember that.
And
clearly.
so 50% of that cost hits the utility budget and 50% of that cost hits this general fund budget. That's why
right.
you see a slight increase here this year.
Great, thanks. When somebody asks me, I'll know what to say.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions?
No, I think that covers it for me for now.
Tim asked my sidewalk questions.
Thanks for the sidewalk insight. That was good.
Do you have a sidewalk
You're welcome.
question?
It's the same one Tim had.
Oh, good. I was on Sunset Lake.
Is it?
Yeah, I just.
Are we going to turn to Carol now?
We are going to turn to Carol next.
All right, so the recreation budget starts on page 18, and much like the DPW budget, there's very little increase, and most of the increases that have taken place, and the theme that you'll see throughout my budget is things like fuel, propane, electric, that we just, we can't control those changes, those increases. And the other is salaries, and you'll see minimum wage, and a lot of my seasonal employees. That is a theme, because I am very heavily staff salary-wise, seasonal positions, which are your high school and college students. So you'll see that theme as we walk through the budget here. First starting off with the more clerical type stuff, the office management type things. You've got your salaries, you've got your overtime, clerical, conferences and memberships, telephone, postage. So most of that stuff has stayed fairly level, as you see throughout that portion of the budget. Moving through into the Gibson-Aiken Center, you'll see a really big change here. You'll notice that there's like over $37,000 that has been pulled out of that budget. And what that is that's the salary for the building maintenance person. As now, as you're aware that there's a building maintenance division, the salaries for that position has been pulled out. So that's the biggest reduction that you see in that area. And then the fuel, the electric, and the utilities, that's all for the Gibson-Aiken Center. Building repairs, that line item is any repairs that need to take place at the Gibson-Aiken Center. And maintenance supplies stayed level. Maintenance supplies meaning any paper products that you need, hand towels, toilet paper, cleaning supplies is that item there, that item. As we move through to parks, the staff salaries there, the staff salary line item is for 4 full-time employees, which one is the park supervisor and 3 park maintenance staff. And the overtime corresponds along with that, including the holiday pay, weekend call just below that. Seasonal employees, again, that's where you're starting to see that increase for that minimum wage, where it's currently at $10.50, and just after the first of the year, will be rate around $11. As seasonal employees, equipment is all the equipment that's used to maintain the parks. Contractual repairs are if we need to go out for a electrician or a plumber. Training, that's training of the staff, could be first aid, CPR, certified pool operators, and certified playground inspectors. Propane is for, we have a couple of our locations that we have converted over to propane. So we use the propane, the gasoline. There's some reductions in those areas to meet our current spending pattern. Building repairs is similar to what I talked about at the Gibson-Aiken Center, but it's building repairs of all of our buildings that, are in the parks. Building maintenance supplies, same thing that I spoke of before. You'll see that theme throughout that it's the same type of usage. Landfill, grounds maintenance, I want to point out that there is a substantial increase there, and I'm sure you're saying, what's that all about? One of the big things there is taking over the maintenance of the riverbank near the Creamery Bridge. Now that we've got a handle on that, that we want to stay on top of it, so it's not such a big project to take on. So, working with local vendors so that we're dealing with that on an annual basis instead of just when things have gotten out of control. So that's where that's what that $4,000 increase there is. Equipment parts, that's for parts that we need for tractors and such to run our facilities, tires for the vehicles, clothing for as contracted in the union contract for the full-time staff, safety equipment, everything that we buy for all of our staff, whether it be safety boots for the seasonal staff in the summertime. We pay a percentage of that, not the full, because we require the steel toe. There's just we cover a portion, and it's a 1/3, 2/3. Lube and oil for the equipment that we operate. Lawn and tree explains itself. Miscellaneous, when it comes to parks, that's miscellaneous equipment for the programs that we offer out in the parks. So whether it be bases, tennis nets, basketball nets, field paint, that's what that line item is for. Cemetery maintenance, that is for the maintenance of Morningside and Prospect Hill Cemetery. The contractual part of it is where we contract out with a vendor to do that work. The lawn and tree is when, where we've had several trees that have had to be removed over the years, and from time to time, we also have to go in and repair. We have sinkholes, and sinkholes is nothing you want to step in a cemetery, so we want to address that. Because it does happen. Gibson Aiken Center programs, staff salaries, that's our evening supervisor. This time of year, when we have programs going on until 9:30 at night, that is that for that evening supervisor that comes in and covers those programs. Senior Center, building maintenance contract, that is for our monthly service for spraying in the kitchen. So then operational supplies is for all senior center activities that we're offering. Skating rink, again, you're going to see the same theme with the seasonal staff salaries and the increase in the propane, the electric. We actually have gone down a little bit. Building repairs as the theme, it's the same theme that we use throughout the entire budget here. Repairs to the building and operational supplies. Again, all of that is there's very little movement in those areas. Day camp, staff salaries, those are the high school and college kids that are hired. There's 12 staff members that are hired in the summertime to go out and run those programs all summer long. Pool, again, the same theme with the staff salaries and the minimum wage. The electrical for the pool, utilities for the pool, building repairs at the pool, and operational supplies. And in a nutshell, that wraps up what each of those divisions are within the Recreation and Parks budget. But like I said, most of those increases are things from fuel, propane, electric, and the biggest one being the grounds maintenance at Creamery Ridge.
Are we going to go through the revenue side of the Parks and Rec? Or
We can.
And then we can ask all kinds of questions?
Sure.
And that's page 4. Because that's always a big issue with parks. We always talk about,
Do we charge enough?
yeah.
Sure.
You want all questions at the end?
Yeah, let's give Carol.
So would you like me to go through and break down each of those items, what we currently charge, and how
How you get it?
how we get there?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're talking page 4 of the budget. Basketball. Basketball is men's and women's basketball. The league. So each resident pays $25, and every non-resident pays $50. That is on top of they pay a fee to the league to take care of the referees. This is above and beyond that. This is what comes actually back to the town, into the town general fund, not the operating of the program. Then softball field is the same theme. That's a much longer program, and we've got the expenses are much greater. So we charge $35 for every resident, $60 for every non-resident, and then when we have tournaments, it's $100 per field per day, and if you want lights, it's $50 per field per night. As we move into the swimming pool, we have our daily fees that are $2 for a resident student, $3 for a resident adult, $3 for a non-resident student, and $4 for a non-resident adult. On top of that, swim team uses the facility between 4 and 6 each day, and they're paying $35 an hour. The snack bar is a percentage of sales. It's 10% of the sales. The Kiwanis Shelter is Kiwanis Shelter Rentals. That is, we charge them. We have 2 sessions where you can go from 10 to 3:30, or 4 to 10, or you can go from 10 to 10. A half-day rental is $75, a full-day rental is $150. The skating rink is, again, we have the daily entrance fees for public skating, $3 for a student, $4 for an adult. Those are Brattleboro residents. For a non-resident, $4 for a student, $5 for an adult. And then we rent it out for youth. Any youth rental is $155 an hour. Any adult rental is $177 an hour. The Gibson Aiken Center, That money that comes in for that is the rental from Brattleboro Senior Meals. That's the rent that they pay the town for the use of the facility. Gibson Aikens, Gibson Aikens Center, day camp. There's a fee that we charge, but $65 of that fee goes back into the town to help offset the salaries. So for every person that registers, $65 is going back into the general fund. Facility use fee, that is every single person, every single youth that registers for a program, whether it be basketball, whether it be soccer, whether it be lacrosse, small fry baseball, $5 per child goes into what's called a facility use fee to help offset the overall expenses. That is not buying uniforms, that is not buying bats, that is just facility use fee. The miscellaneous revenue, that comes from many different directions. We have, if someone rents the Common, there's a the rental up there. There is, for all of our senior programs, we don't charge a fee for them, but we do ask for donations. So that there's a significant amount of money that comes in for donations for the seniors participate in the programs. There are outside groups that come in and rent the rec center for evening meetings. There's a rental fee for that. We have birthday parties. Special groups will come in, school groups will come in and rent the facility. So all of that money is going into miscellaneous revenues. For example, when I say a school group, St. Michael's School comes over and rents the facility. We have a high school group, what do I want to call it, NECA, and there's they come in 5 days a week. This is something new this year. It's only an hour from 8:50 to 9:50, but that generates a little money that goes into that miscellaneous revenue account. Cemetery plots, that's the sale of plots that we have. And then non-resident. Non-resident is any youth fee. If the Brattleboro resident fee is $15, the non-resident youth is $15 more. The non-resident adult is $25 more. And that's what that fee there is, just above and beyond the resident fee. So I think that walks you through the revenue side of Rec and Parks. There's not another page, I don't believe.
All right, does anyone have any questions?
Not at this time.
On everything or just revenue?
Anything that Carol might want to answer.
Oh, I have one thing on the back to the expenditure side. The grounds maintenance that you mentioned, I guess my instinct on these budgets is to kind of look for something that, number one, they're big line items, and number two, we have some control over. So I'm wondering the decision to cover, you said over by the Creamery Bridge. Can you kind of flesh that out for me a little bit? It doesn't strike me as a high-use area, or is it? I mean, so how is the decision made in the department on what to add and what not to add to grounds maintenance?
Would you like me to handle that? Or would you like-
I'll take the first stab at it, and then if you want to get into the details of how we contracted for it, then we can go there. Earlier this year, a resident called out that area had been neglected, and we inspected it and found that we thought that was actually a really valid concern. As Carol pointed out, the plan now is to give it annual maintenance to stay on top of it, because it hadn't been maintained over the last several years, and it had gotten very overgrown with not just in general, but with exotic plants that were harmful to the area, invasive plants, right? So, so Carol coordinated with Public Works team as well as some private contractors and went about the significant task of getting that situation under control, and then looked at how we might do a better job of maintaining it or in the future. And this, I believe, would be contracted, is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah, so the estimate here is what the annual cost of contracting with someone to come in and do a smaller scale maintenance in that area to remove whatever is an invasive species and just maintain the hillside in good condition. So it was, that particular piece wasn't a judgment call of staff, although we are proposing to do the annual rather than just as needed. That's our proposal, but the reaction to the situation where that needed attention it wasn't getting came actually from somebody who spoke at one of these meetings and called all of our attention to that, and it did need maintenance work.
And if I may add one thing to that, this first year being at 4,000, the plan is to go in and plant some some flowers in there to kind of enhance that whole area. Get rid of the invasives and then, put in some locals.
Did you work it out with the bee folks?
The bee?
Yeah.
Different issue.
That was
not at that spot.
That's not the spot?
No.
Okay, sorry. It's the danger of social media. You always know where there's issues, but sometimes you get it wrong. I guess that was my question. Isn't the 4,000 going to be like an ongoing, you think? But
I anticipate for the first couple of years for sure.
Yeah. That's the only thing I came up with, that sort of balance between public good and one individual public good.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess the one more thing I'd say about that spot is you made the point in asking the question that it's not a high use area. I think that's true, but it is equally on the other side of that balancing act a very visible area.
Right.
And so that was part of the equation too. We actually were kind of startled when we realized the condition that it had gotten into, mainly just because it wasn't on a list of places to maintain, and we go right by there every day, but we're thinking about the next thing to take care of. Now it would be on the list of things to take care of because it is a prominent spot in town.
And as you might recall, I was an advocate for maybe converting that into a revenue-producing thing that we could have for the town. Whether that's viable or not, maybe we'll revisit.
That's come up in the past, renting but people get married on the covered bridge.
Right,
And we talked about whether to assign a fee to that, and I think we decided not to. I don't remember all the details, but insurance and lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But the other thing about
take a
those
little build
banks
out.
is that the other thing about that area is it's all Japanese knotweed that was infiltrating there. And even though it may take more than a couple of years to get rid of it, it just spreads everywhere. So if the town, we're basically encouraging it to spread all over people's property. And that is a very, extensively used area. There are people down there all the time.
Yeah.
Plus, there were hundreds of bulbs that were planted there by the garden people a few years ago. They were completely swallowed by the knotweed.
Yeah. Sounds ripe for a invasive grant of some sort. To battle
Invasive
invasives, Anyway, thank you.
Any other questions for Carol?
Thank you, Karen.
Can I just ask one question? And the income, the non-resident fee, so if a non-resident, when somebody uses the swimming pool, everybody's is the charge the same for everybody?
No.
All right, so is the non-resident fee not included in the swimming pool line? It's included in the non-resident line? Do you know?
It is included, it's included in the swimming pool line. It's
Okay.
all under, yeah.
Okay.
It's more the programs that everybody
Okay.
sign up. There is, at the pool, it's $2 for a Brattleboro resident
Yeah.
student and $3 for a Brattleboro resident adult. And then $3 for a non-resident student and $4 for a non-resident adult. But to keep track of that, every dollar would take a whole lot of management. So it just goes into the whole pool income.
Okay, and the non-resident one is the programs?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, this is I don't know if this is you or Hillary. The cemetery committee was going to have that thing about people can become a member of something and then they could get a discount on a plot and everyone's going to clean stuff up. Do you know what's happening with that, or is that?
There is it's Friends of the Cemetery. We have not received any money that I'm aware of. But the intention was that there would be a friends group that would go and do some volunteer work.
Yeah.
However, the cemetery committee has been doing a lot of great work. In the parks, where they'll have a weekend crew, they'll do a lot of cleanup, they'll let us know, and we'll come in and pick up everything that they have done. So
Because
it
there are
has
people
proven
that
to be a
would do,
help.
I would go up and do it. I've just never heard anything
The
like about it.
Friends did get at least minimally organized.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how far
Okay.
along they are, and that is supported by the town clerk's office. So
Yeah.
Hillary will be here in a couple of weeks.
Okay, we can
Actually,
ask
Hillary
her.
will be here next week.
Okay.
Great.
To go over the town clerk's budget, and we can make sure that she's prepared to give you an update on that at that
Yeah,
time.
because that was a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are definitely have some work bees going on,
Okay.
and I think it's more so the committee, and there might, we haven't, the intention was the money would come through the rec department.
Right.
But that, we have not received any money that's come in at this time, but there has been some work bees.
Okay. Thanks. Does anyone else have any questions? Public, select board? No. That's it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Steve, thanks for running the grader at around 11:30 last night.
I didn't know what was going on.
10 times.
I would say it was a nice awakening, wasn't that, neighbor?
I looked out the window going, God, there must be a foot of snow out there, because the grader kept going,
Yeah. What was happening?
The interesting thing is last night the highway supervisor got called out about 8 o'clock, and he looked outside his house and there wasn't any accumulation. It's kind of echoes what the chief was saying. When he got up onto Heinsberg Road, there was over 4 inches of snow and there was actually vehicles off the road. So
So the grader can
Yeah,
go
it
there
was-
as opposed to Grove Street and Oak Street.
I was so confused. Thank you for clearing that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, now we have the 1% local option sales tax, and I know Tim has info, and I know Patrick did a memo, and I don't know if you just want to, for the viewers, sort of give a rundown of some of what you wrote, like what's the tax, how much we think we're going to make. Does that make sense? Just for the people watching on TV who might not have read the memo?
Sure, so I'll take a few moments
And then we'll throw it to
walk
Tim.
through the memo and sort of what's covered. The memo opens just with a couple of high points with respect to the enabling legislation. This is 24 VSA 138, enables certain municipalities to collect a 1% option tax. It can be applied to meals, rooms, which obviously Brattleboro did some years ago, and it can be applied to sales tax as well. There is a couple of things to consider. There is a fee for the collection of local option sales tax revenue, which is required to be performed by the Vermont Department of Taxes. That's a really important point. I know there are some other municipalities that collect local taxes, such as Burlington and Rutland. However, you'll note that Burlington, for example, collects local option sales tax under 24 VSA 138, and that also goes through the Vermont Department of Taxes. So while those municipalities do collect local taxes, they are enabled to do so by virtue of the charters that each of those municipalities have. So that's just something we need to be aware of. There really isn't any option for local collection of local option taxes. We've included a number of the towns that have been collecting this. This includes Brandon and Burlington, Colchester, Dover, Manchester, Middlebury, Rutland Town, St. Albans, South Burlington, Stratton, Williston, Wilmington, and Winhall. Talk a little bit about the process of implementation. There's a very specific article which, if the board chooses to add to the town meeting can then vote upon later in March of next year. The memo speaks to the various different times in which Brattleboro has considered the local options tax, which has been considered several times. Occasionally, there has been an effort to gauge public opinion by having an article added to the Australian ballot vote for annual town meeting. That's not required. That's an important point to point out. A couple of times it's been used, several times it hasn't. As Brattleboro has considered this tax previously. In terms of the revenue that the town would likely collect, there's a little chart here that shows last year, for which there was complete data as fiscal 17, and taxable sales in Brattleboro totaled about $95 million. 1% of which would be roughly $950 million. We estimate.
950,000.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
I'd be like, whatever, we're doing this.
It's a zero.
No voting.
About $950,000, thank you. Approximately 33% would be used and would be kept and collected by the state for the processing of returns throughout town, yielding roughly $630,000 as a revenue line to the town of Brattleboro. One thing that might be interesting to note, there is reason to believe that this number could rise in the future, as there has been some court cases that have made their way to the Supreme Court and have been, the outcome of which is online sales for retailers that sell more than $100,000 worth of goods in the state of Vermont will now be collecting, the state of Vermont will be collecting sales tax, and with it, local option sales tax. And so that's a real change from previous years that just went into effect July 1 of 2018. And so there's reason to believe that sales tax revenues could be increasing both for the state and for any municipality that moves forward with a local option tax. Other than that, there's a handout that the Vermont Department of Taxes produces, which talks about what is taxable and what is exempt. And those are laid out. Some of the major exemptions that folks should be aware of: medications, fuel for motor vehicles themselves, food, funeral charges, home heating, energy for manufacturing and clothing. And there's a detailed attachment to the handout which spells out both the statutory authority for those exemptions and a list of the exemptions.
Did you have a question, Brady?
I do have a clarifying
We're going to throw it over
question.
to Tim.
I have a clarifying question. Tim, do you mind if I ask that now?
Oh, I'm not.
So I want to clarify once again the collection fee, and I want to note where you said that the municipalities that do collect them themselves do so via charter. Is that an option that we have with a charter change? And I'm saying that not just because I'm not afraid of looking at charter change, but also aren't we going to be possibly taking a look at that for things like the youth vote? Isn't it already something that's kind of coming in our purview? And if this was able to be addressed by the same, 33% is hefty
So
for a collection fee.
I share your assessment of the weight of that cost. So I'm going to try and make a point, a fine point, a subtle point possibly.
Thank you.
All taxes collected by Vermont municipalities that stem from 24 VSA Section 138 must be collected by the Vermont Department of Taxes. No matter who you are, in every municipality, that is a component of that taxing structure.
Okay.
Rutland and Burlington, as examples of communities that collect local taxes, collect other local taxes. In Burlington, for example, it's called a gross receipts tax. It's not to be confused with a local option tax.
Why? Just what's the,
Because they're different.
okay.
But
Burlington
confusing
collects
nonetheless.
a gross receipts tax and administers it themselves locally. They also incidentally collect the local option sales tax. But when they collect the local option sales tax, that's collected via the Vermont Department of Taxes. So with this particular tax, the Vermont Department of Taxes is going to be involved no matter what. We could try and follow suit with Rutland and Burlington and seek a charter change that would enable us to collect a different type of tax, whether it be a gross receipts tax or some other type of tax. But any tax which stems from 24 VSA 138 has to go through Department of Taxes.
Thank you for that.
Can I put a reinforcing point on that?
Oh, yeah.
So the statutory reference is for local option taxes. I just want to make sure, I think you've all got that. I want to make sure that people who are following along at home understand that that statutory reference means local option tax. So what a municipality can do by traveling under the eligibility to put an additional 1% on top of what's already collected by the state. In the one case with rooms and meals, which we already participate in, and in the other case with sales tax, which you're considering now. But then if you also wanted to, what's happened in Rutland and Burlington is in addition to that, they participate in that program in the way that we're considering doing it now. And then they also, as an additional tax, got the permission through a charter amendment to impose a locally collected tax above and beyond what they receive through the local option program.
Good clarifier.
And Tim wants to, do you want to talk about this?
Sure.
You have all kinds of yellow.
I think I actually have a follow-up question, but let me just save that for just for you. I've been doing a lot of research on this, and instead of just throwing out a bunch of numbers, I just thought maybe I would just throw out my top lines about why I think this is a great thing to do, and that now is a great time to do it. I think that part of this is that our retailers in the past have had a lot of fear about our proximity to New Hampshire, okay? There's two fears they have. They have a fear about New Hampshire having 0% sales tax, and also their online struggles, their struggles with big online retailers. However, that's just changed recently, and you made a reference to, I think it was South Dakota versus Wayfair.
Correct.
But in February of 2017, the state of Vermont began, Amazon voluntarily, and ahead of that decision, I believe, made the decision to go ahead and start collecting sales taxes for states. And it's a really huge thing for the state of Vermont, because it means a lot of money, a 6% sales tax that is now going to the state of Vermont that wasn't before. It's a big deal. If you go and buy something on Amazon, which I don't recommend, I recommend that you shop at our local downtown merchants, and not just downtown, I should say. But you'll see state sales tax on your line now. And in fact, because of the Wayfair decision just the other day, I ordered some cards, you know, where you get to put your little picture of your family on cards. I decided to do that online, and lo and behold, $4.05 of tax is tacked on. So it's not just the gorilla in the room as far as retail goes, Amazon. It's many other companies that are charging tax for the state. And the other portion of that is the idea that people will decide not to shop in Brattleboro and instead shop across the river. Now, I want everyone to understand that this adds a penny to the sales tax that is already being charged. So none of the items that would be taxed under this 1% local option sales tax would be different than the items that are already taxed 6%. So to me, the idea that someone is okay with paying 6 pennies on the dollar over here in Brattleboro, Vermont, now will suddenly say 7 cents, that's it, I'm going to New Hampshire, is ridiculous. Because we've lost, we meaning the downtown merchants who are dependent on local traffic, have already lost the people that care so much about the 0% sales tax in New Hampshire. There's not going to be any major change in that area. And to reinforce this argument, I would point to what I've delved into it a little bit, the incredible success of the meals and rooms tax. Now, I know back then, that was, can you remind me, 2006?
I believe it was 2006, yep.
There was a lot of argument that this would be a heavy impact for, our area, adding this 1 penny to meals, rooms, and alcohol. That's what it really should be called. And everybody should remember, I think, that meals, rooms, and alcohol is taxed at a much higher rate than this retail sales. It's taxed at 10 and 11%, or 9 and 10%, and the 1%, the 1 penny added on locally for Brattleboro turns it into 10% and 11. I forget which is, I think 11 is alcohol and the other 2 are 10. So it's a pretty, it's getting up there. That's pretty major. But when I look at the sales for Brattleboro, for meals, rooms, it just keeps going up and up. I held it up at our last meeting. It went up 15% just last year. And it went up, I think, 11% the last 2 years before, if you combine them together, because it has a sort of a fluctuating change. Oh, here's my cute little chart. And I think this is a real good measure of some health of disposable income, income that can be expended by families and individuals, that they can choose to do that. And meals is 75% of, this blew me away, meals is 75% of rooms, meals, and alcohol taxes, which I found surprising. And to me, that makes it an even better bellwether of the health of an economy. Because when you think about it, alcohol can fluctuate depending on who's in office nationally, or how the economy is doing generally, or all kinds of things.
Whether you've got a brewery in town.
Sure. And rooms also can be a little fluctuating, I'm sure, too, because of varying things like Airbnb issues that we might talk about soon enough, and the fluctuations of how people stay. It's going through a lot of changes these days. How people stay in a town that's not theirs. So to bring it back to the why now, I really think that the combination of some fairly healthy history in the meals and rooms tax that we have under our belt, and the relatively, I'm not going to say that all of our merchants are doing super well, because obviously some are going to struggle and some are not going to struggle. But it's clear from what I've found so far of the towns that have instituted the local option sales tax, including, by the way, Brandon and Colchester, again, looking at their success with the meals and rooms tax, they're doing quite well on that side of things. I haven't been able to get their 1% local options tax because the state reporting is a little spotty in that area. So I think now is the time to do it, and especially with, as I mentioned in the last meeting, the burden of our taxpayers, our property taxpayers, going from 84 to 86%. I neglected to ask sort of more historical trends, and that's something that I'd be interested in hearing. But I have a feeling it's going up and up and up. And, I've done a little bit of research on how states pay for things, and Vermont has a very high proportion of reliance on property tax. On the school side, I'm sure you hear that all the time. And it's a very real thing.
And it's the largest of the town tax, it's 57%.
Is it now 57?
The school district is larger.
Yeah, I knew. I thought it was like 53, 54. I'll go with that number. And less reliance on income tax and less reliance on sales tax. So I think what this, adds up to is it's a really important moment that we have here that I think we can take advantage of something that, frankly, I think we should have taken advantage of 5 years ago, to make a small, relatively, let's be honest, painless shift away from our property taxpayers who are paying a lot and to people that come into town. This is largely who will be paying this tax. People come into town, pay an extra penny on the dollar on very, as you said, restricted list of items. In fact, the list of things that it doesn't apply to is impressive, and yet it still results in possibly, I would say very soon, well, it's at 2/3, and it could go to $750,000 revenue for the town pretty quickly, I think. So I think I'll just end the little top line speech with, I think residents have told us like time and time again that they do not want to see services cut.
That's right.
We've had a representative town meeting that was generous in a lot of wonderful ways. We had a recommendation from John and I that was $20,000 for the skate park to just push us towards getting over the top. And at representative town meeting, they tripled that. And they also increased our very important human services budget. And so being generous in these really good ways and taking care of our town. Oh, and I didn't even mention our sidewalk plow, which is another example of expansion of services. It's the way to put it, I think. The other end of that is we have to have the ability to pay for these items. There's just no other way around it. And to continually increase the amount that a Brattleboro homeowner will pay, homeowners and renters, I'm sure Brandy might mention correctly, to increase that while outlying areas are not increasing at as rapid a rate, or they're certainly not starting at the rate that we're paying. It has created an imbalance in the way people decide whether or not they're going to personally invest in our town. And I really feel like it's time to do this. It's the last remaining way that really we have, without, charging ridiculous fees. We even are limited on what we can charge with that stuff. But this is our last remaining tool that we have, that we're given by the state under Dillon's rules, to be able to raise revenue for our town. And I think it's a really important thing we do that.
Does anyone have any comments or questions?
I have words. In talking about some of the items that cannot be taxed and would not be affected by this local option tax, I'm not going to read all of these, but things that stand out to me are coats and jackets, baby blankets, diapers, earmuffs, gloves and mittens, pantyhose, so we know when this list was created. Clearly that was considered. But so when I read this, what I'm surmising is things that are what whoever made this list decided was important at the time that this list was made for people in the Northeast to get around. Work clothes, diapers for your babies, coats, jackets, mittens, hats. There are several over-the-counter drugs, ibuprofen, aspirin, antacids, cough medicine, decongestants.
All medication.
All medications, several medical equipment and supplies. So this is not some kind of broad-based tax that is meant to hit, as Tim said, people who are, working day to day, every day, and let's face it, have already changed their habits. People who were going to go to New Hampshire are already driving to Walmart. They're already doing that either in Keene or over in Hinsdale. They're already buying their cigarettes and alcohol across the bridge. Some are even going over there to buy gas. The people who are remaining stoic shoppers of downtown are definitely not going to leave based on 1 penny. It's not going to happen. These people are people who maybe are coming from out of town, and this is a wonderful opportunity for them to kind of be extended members of our community and support the place that they love so much. This is really an opportunity for all of us who can and do afford to shop downtown in whatever capacity to know that at least a a penny. So another penny on however much of what you're buying is going to stay right here in town. And yes, some of that's going to be collected by the state. And at this time, you know, we're going to suck that up a little bit, but we're still talking in the 600,000. And Tim, can you refresh me on what the direct impact that could have on our proposed tax rate for property owners this year?
Sure. Well, as Patrick pointed out,
3.3% reduction, or 3.3% of our budget.
Okay.
We would get through not taxing.
Peter, can you refresh my memory on what the property tax owners generously paid by the end of town meeting on just the part that relates to the select board and not the part that relates to the school? What was our increase on the town portion
Last year.
on property owners? Yeah.
Slightly over a nickel. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact amount. I can get
The
that.
percentage,
It's like-
wasn't it like 4.6? Why is that burned into my mind
Yeah, that
like a
sounds about
trauma
right.
way?
Because
that was the other stuff.
the cents is a little bit larger than the percent.
Right,
Because we're a
yeah.
little over a dollar. So that's right. It would have been between 4.5% and 5%.
So all the wonderful things that we did. So every time that we do something that benefits this town, which has an aged infrastructure, has, you know, we're asking people to come in, we're asking people to live here, to work here, to set up families here. We need to have good sidewalks. We need to have things that are in good working order for people to want to relocate here. Those of us who live in Vermont, we're already stoic stock. We already, you know, we also want those good things, but we might be a little more lax on some of our expectations. But when we're asking people to relocate here to boost our population to then pay into the property tax, we need to be backing that up, and we can't always be backing that up on the backs of taxpayers. People were very generous last year of property taxes, but I'd like to remind us how that does trickle down into low income families when it gets built into tax rates, when it gets built into rentals, the tax rate. And when rents go up, they don't come back down. Okay. If the rents come back down, we have a bigger problem on our hand than a 1% local option tax. We have a serious economical issue when rents start falling back down. So this is a really great way to insulate people who are living here and working to get by day by day.
I agree. And I have the answer to your question because I had.
Oh, I'd love to
had a
hear. I
moment.
agree, and I have the answer to your question.
Yes, that penny on the dollar spent on all of those restricted items that we talked about would result in, if we put this forward with the budget, a reduction of our property taxes on the town side by 1.4%, versus we are looking at a rise of 3%, 2.9%.
This is a no-brainer for me.
It's a 5% difference between having this 1% local option sales tax and not having it.
Thank you.
And Tim, is your recommendation that we assign it to this is revenue, and we're just going to use it for all our regular costs and to reduce the amount of revenue we have to raise through property tax? Not for any particular use or any dedicated use or anything like promoting entrepreneurship or something else that would enhance the local economy? No specific focus?
That is my recommendation, simply because what we're trying to attack here is our yearly
Property tax.
revenue and property tax, and we shouldn't be assigning it to special or pet projects. We need to be assigning it to property tax relief, and that's the general fund.
And that's what I'm going to support as well.
Kate, you got anything to say?
Well, one thing I do want to say, and I don't know what I'm going to do here, but that this list we're looking at is not all-inclusive. There are things that are being taxed on this list that aren't written on it. So I just want to caution that, not that I'm disagreeing with whatever anybody's saying, but there will be, it's not all tourists that are going to be paying the tax. And
No,
it's not,
especially with that online
Right.
tax now, that's all Brattleboro people.
right, and it's not just downtown. I mean, this is any store in the town of Brattleboro. You know, when somebody goes in and buys a book or a thing of paper towel. So I just want to caution us from thinking that this is just the list of things that are going to be taxed, and it's only going to be people that don't live here that pay it. I just want us to recognize that there are going to be Brattleboro taxpayers whether it's a penny or not, that are going to, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page on that.
I think
Thank
maybe, rather than rely on a piece of paper from the state, is to just tell people, which is, this
Why
is
not?
absolutely,
Why not, Tim?
well,
No, on the record,
absolutely
why
the
shouldn't
case.
we? I agree.
Yeah. It's absolutely the case that things that people are used to already paying 6% on, they're now going to pay 7%. 1 penny is going to go to Brattleboro.
That's right.
However, with this caveat, it does not apply to something that if someone lived in Dummerston and bought from a Brattleboro company, I believe it would have to be purchased within the confines of Brattleboro.
Delivered.
Yeah.
It's delivered to another
Exactly.
town. It's not taxed,
Yeah.
which is kind of bizarre, but.
But I just wanted to, on the other side of what you said, I don't want people to think that, oh, we're trying to hide something with this sheet that's not complete.
Right.
We're just saying 1 more penny on everything that you're already used to paying 6 cents on, you're going to pay 7 cents per dollar.
That's right.
Except pantyhose.
Except pantyhose. Stop buying those.
And no girdles. Girdles is on here.
Also,
you
don't
gotta
buy
buy those
those.
pantyhose.
It's not good for you.
Are there any more comments from?
Oh, yeah, I just want to reinforce what you said, Kate, because the online change is really welcome, and particularly statewide, but it means that people getting things in Brattleboro are going to pay the 1%, which may say, well, if I got to pay one tax on this, I might as well go downtown and get it, which would be great. But the purpose of both of these taxes is so that commercial areas, retail concentrated areas, the state passed them so that there would be a way for us to pay for all the services that we provide. That's exactly what it's for. And so it's not going to be as effective as it was before they did it, but we're going to get the online law, but we're going to get more money, so it's a wash. But I don't think that we should in any way, if the town passed this, we should in any way consider that we didn't need to continue to focus on other remedies as a hub town, because it's nowhere near what we need. And I don't think anybody's saying that. I just want to really, I think that's one of the things that was unsaid in what you said, Kate, but we really need to keep that clear and keep pushing that. The other thing is that I'm going to encourage us to actually take an action on this and decide to put this on the I can't make the motion now because I'm going to talk about it, but you can't talk about a motion and then make the motion. You have to make the motion at the time. But so I'm going to encourage us to make a decision on this tonight so that there's lots of time, although Chris isn't here right now. The Brattleboro people are probably watching, and it'll get out that the town's going to, this is going to go back in the budget, because I want the community to have plenty of time to hear about it. I want the people who are going to come in here and explain to us how all the things we just said are only part of the truth, or only one way of looking at it. And one thing that comes to mind immediately, which I heard during the last one, is that, oh yeah, people, the penny doesn't make any difference. It's not a big deal because it's already 6 cents. But when it hits, what gets into the paper is Brattleboro raises sales tax. Big headline, and it's the discouragement, and it's the continuing emphasis on how different it is here and there. And that's only one of the many things that we're going to hear. And I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for people to come in and do that. So I don't know if somebody wants to make a motion that we put this language on the thing or not. If not, once I shut up and somebody else says something, then I can make the motion, if nobody else wants to.
Now, are you talking, and I'm going to go to the audience too if they want to ask something, are you talking putting it on the ballot in
For
March?
town meeting, for the implementation on the second page of Patrick's memo, the language to put on the town meeting for March 23rd, 2019, to see if the town will assess a 1% local option sales tax in accordance with 24 VSA Section 138.
Okay, and this is not, in addition, you're talking just the March 23rd town meeting and not the townwide vote?
If we want to do that too,
Well, I
that's
just wanna
fine.
clarify, make
Yeah,
sure we
that's
know
all
what
I'm
you're
moving
talking
right
about.
now.
Is it either or both, Kate? That confuses me a little.
I think you can do both.
We can do both.
I don't see a reason to do both.
I'm just saying you can do both, I'm not saying.
Yeah, I
okay,
just was, that was my confusion. I asked her to clarify.
I think we should do both, but right now, this is here so they know we're going to be talking about, and they'll come in and share their perspectives.
Okay.
All right, well,
Kate,
Oh, no, I didn't know if anybody in the public wants to ask a question.
Franz?
Then I'll.
come all this way.
Franz Reichsman, Finance Committee. You know, it's very easy, I think, to say, well, there's no real difference between a 6% sales tax and a 7% sales tax in terms of how it affects the local economy. But I also wonder if there's any data on that. I mean, if it's been studied, you know, it's sort of the frog in the boiling water example of, you know, okay, you go up a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. Well, what point is there a tipping point? Or, you know, how do you address that? And, you know, you've put it forth that there's really no effective difference, but I wonder if there's any actual known hard information on that sort of thing.
That's a heck of a visual, by the way. The frog in the boiling water, and what's the point? Like, where's the...
I actually suspect that frogs are smart enough to jump out of a pot of water as it gets hotter, but it's a common analogy, so I used it.
Wow.
Well, do you mind?
You haven't tested it yourself?
You've got the papers.
I haven't.
So,
Ew.
I mean, I made a reference earlier to if this was going to be some sort of crushing blow to local economies, we would see the exact same thing happening somewhere in the meals, rooms, alcohol tax, because you can make an argument that that's a very similar situation. And as I pointed out, it's that pot of water in the meals, alcohol, rooms tax is even hotter because you're starting at a higher tax and you're adding on yet another penny. So we're going from 9 and 10% to 10 and 11%. And on the meals, rooms, I mean, I did research, but I'm not, you know, I don't really have the time to do the amount of research you might be looking for. But, you know, 11 years ago, Brattleboro instituted that extra penny, and 24 other cities and towns continue to do it. There was one, I think, that repealed it. Oh, no, there was a repeal of the local option sales tax. But so 24 other towns do the meals, rooms, and alcohol tax. 13 other towns currently do the local option sales tax. Some of them do both. And I can't find evidence that any of them are experiencing trouble, including Hartford, which is on the river. It's 4 towns, I believe, Hartford does, which is weird.
It's a weird area.
Queechee, Hartford, 2 others. Sorry, guys.
West Hartford and Wilder.
It's very nice, beautiful place.
You know this because we lost our...
It's all White River, too.
Rod's up there. We can call Rod.
Rod and Hannah.
Yeah, that's right. Both of them were up there.
What's going on there? But anyway, that's why I referenced the anecdotal stuff, and of course it's not a great data-driven answer to that. But I would think that they would have, you know, seen some problems if being right across the river from Zero Taxville, USA, New Hampshire, and their revenue is going up and doing well from the meals rooms tax. So the combination of, I think, it being ameliorated by the internet tax situation that has come in since we last had this big argument at representative town meeting. And really no one, this is a fear that's out there, but I think for a fear, I'd like to see the data on the fear side. Like what we should be asking for people's evidence that, as I said, someone is going to say, I'll pay 6% on this pair of skis, but no way am I going to pay 7% on this pair of skis. I don't buy it. Sorry.
I mean, like, I'm super conflicted. I've been against this every single time. Because with the rooms and meals, or any of these, we don't really know who's paying it. And if you think about it, if you're renting a room, or, you know, if you're, is it a tourist that's paying all this, or is it locals? You know, because you're saying that, oh, the rooms, or especially the meals part is going up. That means people in Brattleboro have a lot of disposable income to go to a restaurant. But we really don't know, who it is. And, you know, that's what's really difficult. And we do get a lot of tourists, you know, that come into this town. And the rooms.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to interrupt you. I just
Yeah.
want to point out that those tourists come from heavily taxed states mostly.
But I'm saying if you're a tourist, you're going somewhere to see the leaves, and you're going to go to Vermont, you're going to see the leaves, and the place you want to visit, if you want to stay in Brattleboro, you stay in Brattleboro. If you live here, you're making a choice. Do I go out and eat? Do I have that? I'm trying to make an argument that we can't say that the meals tax has gone up because Brattleboro people are doing it. And what I'm trying to say is this is where I'm conflicted, because Brattleboro people are going to pay the extra 1%.
On the things that they already pay.
Right. But I'm just, this is where I get conflicted. And I know people say, the merchants, they won't mind. But there is a fear for them, which of course, that's, every day I deal with them. So it's, I'm sensitive to that.
As you should.
Yeah, but I actually was sensitive to it before I actually got paid for my job, so I just want to make that clear. It's not because I get paid for this, because I may vote a way that they don't like. But it's a lot of perception. It's a lot of we're high tax. There aren't any border towns as of yet that have the 1% local option sales tax. They do rooms and meals. So, that's where I'm conflicted, because I think, the tax or the local option sales tax is going to be paid more by people who live here as opposed to rooms and meals tax. If you're living here, you don't go stay in a hotel. But if you're coming to Leaf Peak, you do stay in a hotel. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things I'm curious about, because I thought it was very interesting, Tim, what you said, that most of it is, the rooms and meals is collected by meals, not rooms.
Yeah,
so
weird.
you've made me want to go back and look at is that a trend that's going down, or is that just the way it's always been? Because, and this is totally outside, and I shouldn't even say it, but it'd be interesting to see how short-term rentals factor into, is that the reason it's going down? But that's like another issue.
There's been a blip. I actually saw that. There's been a blip in rooms going up.
Yeah.
Really?
Because of the Airbnb factor. It looks like.
That's really
It's not huge, but it's definitely up.
Yeah, because I thought that was an interesting thing. So I'm super conflicted about this. For a variety of reasons. The one thing on not the revenue but the expenditure side is, if I was going to support something like this, it would be because it does go to property tax relief and not go to something special. Because I think that's a mistake to spend it on something, because we're just taxing Brattleboro people more on top of, not giving anybody relief. So, I'm super, I'll admit, I'm super conflicted about this, because I've always been hating how the property taxes go up. But there's these other issues that I think, I think it is valid to worry about what the merchants think, and I think it is valid to recognize that people in Brattleboro there are things that they buy that they're going to pay more. Yes, it's 1% more, but so I'm really conflicted. That's where I am.
I agree with you,
totally
though,
conflicted
about it not going to a special project. That's really important to me, that it go into the general.
Yeah, and how much, I don't know. I mean, how much power does the select board have to say it's going to tax relief, or when it gets to the town meeting?
That's us entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same as any other aspect of the budget,
Yeah.
where you propose a budget to town meeting, and then it's up to town meeting to approve it or not. But if town meeting doesn't approve what you propose,
Right, it comes.
they can change it, but they can't direct you how to
Right,
implement
right.
the change.
They can change it by a very
They can't-
specific
they can't do a
dollars
line
and cents
Yeah.
But they can
amount. So
reduce
there's no
or increase
question.
the amount.
Yeah. Now, is there a way, and I'm not saying to hold up on your motion, but is there a way for, we were talking about what's it going to look like? Is there just something that we can have, like some kind of chart, so people can see that if we apply it to the budget, this is how much it's going to go down? You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
a now versus.
So that exists in Patrick's
it?
memo.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry,
But that's all right. We can,
Okay.
present it differently, so it's not embedded in all this other narrative information. But on the
see what it
third
is.
page of his memo
Yeah.
is where he
Yep.
summarizes the
Yep.
the revenue it would generate,
Yep.
which is equivalent to approximately 5.5 cents on the tax rate.
Yep.
And then the next page, it
Yep.
shows
Okay.
the difference between how it would go up
Yep.
without it,
Yep.
and how and property taxes, that is, would go up without this and would go down
Yeah,
with this.
okay.
And this is on our website now.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yep.
I can
And
see
I
that.
like that idea, kind of like having that real world, one piece of information with multi parts to it.
And
But
if you'd
I-
like, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to suggest that we sometimes also give everyone, when we're talking about budgets, the per 100,000.
Yes, that would be
I would
helpful.
love to see that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that'll be.
So we can add
Yeah.
a couple of columns
Yeah.
to it, or, maybe a footnote to it or something. We'll take a look at how to best represent that, so it pops
That'd be
nice
great.
and clear.
Yeah.
The per 100,000 for sure in terms of the savings for, so people can run the numbers for how they
Yeah.
would save on their own tax bill. But in addition to that, I think just the conversion to cents, because
I think it
people
would
tend to
help.
think about the tax rate in dollars and cents as opposed to percentage increases.
Yeah.
So
Some
we'll
people-
present that additional information as well.
Because that would help me personally to make a decision on this, and I don't know if David's going to make the motion tonight, but, and I think it would just help the public to understand it too, and be able to say, oh, I'm for this or I'm not. You know what I mean? I think we have to present it as if, just know what the figures are, that if we were going to use it for tax, or, budget reduction, so it'll reduce the taxes.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
So even if you were to decide tonight that you do want to place this before representative town meeting, what we can do when we have that catch-all evening a little further on in this process is bring you some additional visuals to express for the public's understanding what the impact of this would be if that decision or recommendation of the board is approved by representative town meeting. So this additional chart or expanded chart that you talked about, we could bring back to you for that purpose, for you to decide whether or not you think that's sufficient for explaining this to the public.
Right.
We might need that ahead of time,
Right.
before that meeting, because people, I assume, will start responding quickly.
Absolutely, right. So what I'm anticipating, so that'd be 2 weeks from tonight. It would be part of your backup package.
Great.
Right.
And then it would be part of your discussion that evening.
Do we, and Dan, I'm not telling you not to do it, but do we have to make that motion tonight and just give people another week?
Well,
I mean-
the reason I want to is because 3 of us want to put it before the
Right.
voters.
And I'm not trying to, I'm
Yeah,
not trying
no,
to
I
stop
understand.
anybody.
And I don't think, we tend to, because we decide whether to do this,
Right.
we tend to think it really matters a lot, what we think. And and it really
I don't
doesn't,
think-
because
did not
we've
think that's
thought
where you were
this and
going.
put it on, I put it on, I think twice already. This is 3 for me. Maybe this
Yeah.
is only my second. Seems like at least
Yeah.
3. And turns out that what we think really didn't matter at all.
Right.
But the fact that 3 of us, and now 4, have said this is going to go to control the property tax, and that we've been asked so many times and over so many ways to do that, but don't cut any programs. So, and this is one of the things that the state does allow a municipality to do. And frankly, if we say we're going to talk about it again, it's going to just put off for a week or 2 the response
Right.
and the research and the getting the charts done and people coming in and telling us what they think. And I would just rather move it now.
Because when and this is why I'm conflicted, because once we do this, we haven't taken public input on whether we should do it or not. It doesn't matter. It's, people could come in here and say, we don't like it, but it's already on the town meeting warning. So it doesn't, their public input now has to be to town meeting reps. So that's the only reason, I'm sort of like, well, if we do this tonight, it doesn't matter that people come in and say we're worried about it. That's the only reason I'm concerned about it. And because I don't know, what I'm going to do about this. That's the only reason I'm saying, because we're not allowing public participation in our decision.
Oh, sure we are.
Not if we
Well,
put it on
nobody's here,
tonight.
tonight, the front, not nobody,
We talked about it last week.
Right, and we said we're going to put it on.
and talk about
This
this week.
week.
We talked about it this week,
Right.
and it got above the fold
Right.
article and
Right.
they're former.
Right, and I'm not saying people are going to come in next week and say anything. I'm just saying for me, but, that doesn't matter because there's not just me. I'm just saying, once we do this, it doesn't matter what the chart says. It doesn't matter anything because the next argument is going to be people, lobbying individual town meeting reps. And that's what I just want, just to make sure we all understand
But that's
that.
basically our system.
Oh, it is. I'm
And
not saying
that's-
it's not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it's kind of like saying we haven't talked enough about Public Works because there was nobody here tonight.
No,
Well,
and
No, I understand completely and if it's on the agenda, here's the recommended motion.
Yeah.
Then everybody knows it's on our business and we're going to move on it. I think, you kind of convinced me, but on the other hand,
because to me, this is not like the public works agenda. We're actually going to increase a tax in our town. I mean, you know what I mean? And we're deciding right now, and it's fine. I mean, I'm not arguing. I'm just telling you my own personal argument because I really don't know what I'm going to do, but that doesn't matter. So, because if we vote on this, it's on the town meeting thing, which is fine because it is up to town meeting to decide the budget
Yes.
and everything.
Yep.
So, I'm going back and I'm making arguments on both sides because
well,
I can't decide.
I think it's more elegant if you make the
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah,
If you
okay.
don't, I will, because I really feel like,
Can I add to that discussion?
please.
Kate, you are right. If you want public input at another meeting, if you vote tonight to put it on the town warning, the only other input is going to be the night that you approve the warning, unless you put it on another select board agenda for public discussion. If you
Or people could come-
ask to go on the warning tonight,
Right.
the next time that the public has an opportunity to talk about that is at the end of January, when we're trying to approve the warning. If you're asking for more public input before actually putting it on the warning, it would be on a select board agenda.
I think it's actually almost easier because people could come at 6:15 and know when it's going to be on the agenda and get it over with. Because if it's not on the agenda, they can come and talk about it.
Oh, you're saying they can come any
During
night
public
during
input,
public,
yeah.
I see what you're saying.
But I think, this has been talked about a lot. I think, I'm going to move it and we'll see how the vote goes. So I move the following article be placed on the meeting warning for Saturday, March 23rd, 2019. To see if the town will assess a 1% local option sales tax in accordance with 24 VSA Section 138.
Is there any discussion on the motion from either anyone on the board or in the public?
well, you want more discussion?
No, I was just asking for it though.
I don't think we need more discussion.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, we have a motion to see if the town, or to put on the town meeting warning, the following, to see if the town will assess a 1% local option sales tax in accordance with 24 VSA Section 138. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. 3-0, motion carries. And I just want to clarify, the only reason I'm voting no is because I don't feel we had enough public participation. So that's why I'm voting no. That's our agenda for tonight. Our regular meeting is over, but I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of a real estate purchase or lease option where the board has determined that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the select board or people involved at a substantial disadvantage. Invited into the executive session are the town manager. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We're not going to come back because we have nothing. We're done.
And we're not going to take any action.
Right, so we're not going to take any action when we come back, so we're just going to adjourn out of executive session, so there's no reason for anybody to wait
Come
around.
back in public and adjourn.
Yeah, but nothing's going to happen.
For the record, yeah.
Great.